My name is Duncan Sabien. I'm the curriculum director for the Center for Applied Rationality, which is a think tank in Berkeley that runs applied rationality workshops where we attempt to take all of the really depressing research into human cognition and biases and heuristics and turn it into actionable things that allow you to actually think better and act better and do better. For this talk, I have one single point that I wanted to make that I think would help make the EAG conference go better and sort of give people a frame to get the most out of the conference. Have you guys noticed the big fight over gender and diversity in Google and so forth going on? Yeah, my assumption is that if you took the people at this conference, EA Global, and you asked everybody to say their opinion, that we would actually be pretty evenly split on both sides, where a lot of people are very much in favor of we should at least think about and consider these things, and a lot of people are very much in favor of hey, there are some things that are just gonna start a slippery slope of dangerous bad stuff. And so the question is how do we get past that sort of disagreement? How do we get to a place where we can actually have safe, productive conversation that moves forward? CFAR has a technique in this vein, sort of an algorithm that we have people follow and go through. It's called double crux. I don't have time to teach you double crux today, but what I wanted to do was give you the sort of unilateral version of double crux. Double crux is a game you can play where you take another person and you both agree to sit down and have a conversation in this certain way. And it allows the conversation to go very well and be productive. But you can't always get the enemy to double crux with you, right? And so there's sort of a, how can you get past an antagonistic frame where things are going badly right from the start? So the metaphor I want to draw here is something okay, this is going to be very, very 101, very basic, very naive metaphor. But take communism, Marxism, communism on one hand, and take capitalism, the invisible hand, on the other. To me, the difference between these two systems is that communism takes the range of human behavior. It's humans can be very, very bad, and humans can be very, very noble. And communism says, hey, if we can just be at least this good, we can put together a system that'll be really good and really helpful and good for people and productive and everybody can live happily and be equal and that sort of thing. Whereas capitalism looks at the range of human behavior from bad to noble and says, all right, if everyone is terrible, can we still make a system that works, right? And both communism and capitalism have their flaws. Capitalism is not perfect. Obviously, there's a lot of problems with the way that our markets are today. But there is this interesting thing about taking bad ingredients and trying to make a good thing out of it. And similarly, what I'd like to point out today is a way to take sort of a selfish, self-centered approach to debate and conversation and demonstrating that it can actually end up being pretty good for everybody involved. Make sense? Cool. So here is my model of conversation and cognition. So we have the universe, and then this is going to be me, and this is going to be you. So I observe the universe, I take in data, and then in my black box, in my brain, I process that data, I think things through, and I come out with a conclusion. In this case, the conclusion is triangle. That's a metaphor. It could be that Coke is better than Pepsi, or it could be that Spider-Man Homecoming was a terrible movie, or it could be something important about which cause to prioritize, right? You have done your own thinking in your own black box, and you came out with circle. And the thing that often happens is that people get caught up in disagreement here. They just bash their conclusions against one another, right? You can think of arguments over which sports team is the best, right? Or lots of political debate in America these days, just triangle, circle, triangle, circle. So this is bad. Boring, uninteresting, doesn't go anywhere. The other problems that happen are that I can dismiss you here, right? So I think it's triangle, you think it's circle. Maybe that means that you're blind, right? You don't actually see the universe, you don't actually understand what's going on. And once I've decided that you're blind, I can ignore everything that you're saying, okay? Also, I could decide that you're evil. I could decide that your black box is bad, right? You're stupid, dismiss. And this, it seems to me that this is what's going on in the debate today about the Google diversity stuff. Both sides have like come up with lots of reasons to just completely write off what everybody else is saying. Fortunately, the EA and rationalist communities are not doing so bad. There's some actual conversation happening. But I see a lot of people just being like, nope, the people who fired this person are evil, or the person who wrote the memo is evil. Nope, they're dumb. Nope, they don't understand. Instead of this dynamic, where we're just sort of like dismissing and getting rid of, what I want to do is turn everybody to focus on this sort of dynamic here. Again, like I was saying earlier, this is my amazing metaphor for the universe and the people in it. This guy here is me, and this is how much of the universe I have been able to sort of like see and explore and encounter. And this guy here is you, and this is how much of the universe you've been able to see and explore and encounter. And since we have different perspectives on the universe, we're going to disagree about, like, for instance, if we're standing right here, which way should we go, right? You and I are not going to think the same thing necessarily. So what I want to turn people toward, in the sense of like communism versus capitalism, is convinced, not convincing. This idea that what you want to do to maximize your ability to get through this maze, to maximize your ability to like navigate through the universe, solve all the problems, achieve all your goals, is you want to steal everything the other person knows, right? You want to like steal as much information as you can possibly get. It's not about the other person's conclusions so much. You don't really care about this part. What you care about is this part and this part. What do they see that I don't? And how are they processing that I don't understand yet, right? So the idea here is that in your conversations here at this conference, when you find people who disagree with you, those are actually going to be the more interesting people, because the people who agree with you have probably been to the same parts of the maze that you've been to. They've probably seen the same things that you've seen. And it's the people who've seen other stuff that provide you with an opportunity to update your map and get access to more parts of the maze. In particular, you don't want to have to explore the whole universe by yourself. One of the cool things about having language is that we can, like, you know, steal from the experiences of others. So what I want you to do is look for those people who disagree with you, and then I want you to steal everything you can out of their black box. So questions like, what do you see that I don't? Why do you think this is true? What would cause you to change your mind? What would cause me to change my mind? These are questions where instead of trying to change them from circle to triangle, right? Instead of trying to update them, you're just trying to see as much as you can, figure out as much as you can. Make sense? Cool. We have a few minutes for questions and comments if anybody wants to poke at that. That was like the super lightning fast hyper version, I know. Any thoughts or ideas? Yeah.
How do you apply that to when people get very polarized about a topic?
Yeah.
For example, the memo. Stealing information becomes really redundant and exhaustive after the first, like, 4 people or less of that other side. How do you continue that? Like, would you just ignore those conversations then? Or?
Yeah, so actually there's, when we do double crux as a whole technique and we go through like all of the different things, one of the pieces of advice that we give is that this type of thinking, this type of behavior is like a sometimes snack, right? One of the other tips that we give people for conferences like EA Global is when you're bored, walk away. Like a lot of the time we waste time sort of hanging around and like, okay, I should virtuously hear this person out, even though I think I've heard everything before. Yep, they're saying that's, yep, I should nod, I should listen. I want to be open-minded and listen because I want them to be open-minded and listen, and I want to like be the change. And you can just skip that sometimes. Like it's good to do that sometimes. But in this vein, if you're only at a conference for 2 days, you don't want to like waste time being bored. So in that case, or if you've heard the argument like 4 times, I would say just disengage. There's a certain limit to like how far you can go with somebody who doesn't want to be on your team. So I would like give it the old college try. And then I would even like try one more time. There's like, when I think that I've tried, I usually haven't quite tried, right? And I can like pause and be like, okay, let me give like one more actual effort. But then at that point, you can cut your losses and just take your map and go home, I think.
How do you distinguish that point in time where you say, like, I'm going to take my map and go home from the other points where you point at their black box or their way that they got that information and say, I already know what this is, you're stupid, or I've already heard this?
Yeah, so the distinction here is that I'm actually advocating being totally self-centered. You're not like making any conclusions about their black box. You're not drawing any conclusions about whether they're right or whether they're wrong. You're just following the thread of what's interesting and alive for you. So you're saying, okay, I'm curious about this. You have like a different conclusion than me. I wonder if this means that I'm missing something, right? And then you try to investigate, am I missing something? Do you see things that I don't? Do you have interesting information that I lack? Cool. Cool, I heard it, and then you're done, right? There doesn't actually need to be the step where you decide like, oh, this is a good person or this is a smart person, because in this sort of capitalistic version of communicating with people, it's all about updating your map. Oh, and by the way, like I forgot to give the conclusion. The reason this is good, have you ever tried to like force an update on somebody else? Like make them agree with your side of the thing? It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time, it often doesn't stick, it often doesn't work. But just as capitalism works on this assumption of like, if everybody sort of selfishly pursues their own interests, and then we add in a layer of like not hurting people and like trying to regulate things a little bit. But here, if you sort of aggressively pursue enriching your own map, if everybody's doing this, then everybody's like after all the information they can get, and everybody's maps get updated as like quickly as possible. And then, great, like once you find people who you want to cooperate with, you've both got like rich, full, involved, thick maps. This is going to be the lightning version. I'm just going to assert things, and those things, you may like squint at them and be like, I don't know, but it's because I have, 7 minutes. So here's the metaphor. Communism, capitalism. This is a very 101, very basic, very naive metaphor. Communism, I claim, looks at the range of human behavior from like very, very bad and selfish and self-centered all the way to like noble and virtuous, and says, hey, if we all just like kind of hang out right here, like you don't have to be a saint, but let's also not be evil, right? If we all just hang out right here and be good, we can build like a really good thing that's like equal and fair and valuable, right? Everybody with me so far? Capitalism does a different thing, which I claim is more interesting. Capitalism looks at the same range of human behavior from like virtuous and noble all the way to like evil and self-centered, and says, you know what? As long as we're like here, we can build a system that like creates value and creates wealth and is like pretty good. So communism is asking us to like put in good people and claims it will get out a good society. And capitalism is asking if we put in just people, like they don't even have to be good. It's like, if we take flawed humans, how can we come up with a good system? With me so far? So obviously both of these things are flawed. Capitalism's not perfect, free markets are not perfect. But there's a technique that CFR teaches called double crux, where what you do is you and another person sit down and you engage in a very particular kind of debate where you both agree to sort of investigate your own reasons for why you believe what you believe and sort of expose your thinking to the other person and allow them to see your cruxes, like what's the crux of the matter for you. And this kind of debate is really cool when you can pull it off, right? If there's somebody that you trust and you have a lot of time, you can sit down and like, hey, we're both good people. Let's do the good people conversation, and it's great. I posit that it's not always easy to like get into that mode though, that sometimes people are antagonistic, sometimes people don't have time. How many of you are aware of the like, I'm gonna call it a kerfuffle going on at Google right now? Right, so the problem here, going back to this picture, just to recap, we both take in universe, we both do some kind of processing, we both come out with our conclusions, right? The problem is that when we do this, when we disagree, right, often we use that disagreement as an excuse to dismiss other people, right? If I think triangle and you think circle, well, obviously that means that you're blind, right? Like your box isn't taking in the right data from the universe, right? Or it means that your black box is broken. You're just crazy or dumb, right? How could you possibly think this wrong thing, right? And the problem here, I posit, is something like being sure that I have all the pieces. Have you noticed people in this kerfuffle using other people's using disagreements as an excuse to write people off? Oh man, I've been following Facebook. I've been all over Facebook all this week, and people are just like, here's what I think, and the other person's like, here's what I think, and they're like, great, you're a moron. Right? Like, it's so quick. It goes so quickly to that level of like, well, you must be dumb then, right? Or evil or something. And so what I want to do is have you guys at this conference, at the EA Global Conference, just for a couple of days, drop the whole like evaluating other people's boxes thing. Drop the whole like figuring out whether they're observant or whether they're smart. Drop all of that. Don't try to convince anybody of anything this weekend, but instead, be convinced. The idea here is, this is my amazing map of reality. This is the whole universe, right? This is me, I'm here. I've seen this much of reality. I have access to like this much of the maze. This is you, you're here. You've seen this much of reality. You have access to this much of the maze, right? And the goal here should be for me to do the selfish thing, right? In the sort of capitalistic sense, I think we will all together get further if we pursue sort of selfishly stealing information from each other, right? You visited parts of the maze that I haven't been to. I could go there myself, but that would take a whole lot of time. It's much better if I was like, oh, okay. You're like saying things that I disagree with. You must know something that I don't, or you must be like reasoning in a way that I'm not familiar with. What can I steal out of it, right? Like, what do you know that I don't? What do you see that I don't? And how can I just copy it and expand my own map so that I can learn about these parts of the maze without ever having to visit them? And if we all do this weekend, if you are convinced rather than trying to convince other people, you're just like steal, steal, steal. And meanwhile, everybody else is also steal, steal, steal. And none of us are in conversations where you're like, okay, I will virtuously listen to you for the next 5 minutes as you try to convince me of a thing because we're at EA Global and I'm supposed to listen and I'm supposed to be polite. No, don't do that. Don't be bored, right? Just aggressively pursue what you're curious about. And I claim that in the same way that capitalism is not perfect, right? Capitalism is not perfect, but it produces a lot of value. I claim that if we all adopt this sort of selfish, interested, convinced, not convincing frame, we will get a whole lot further in terms of more of us getting bigger pictures of the map. And if you come out of this weekend having doubled your map, that's just phenomenal, right? And especially if you come out of this weekend having doubled your map and your friend Steve comes out of the weekend having doubled his map, and your other friend Alice comes out of the weekend having doubled her map, then like later you guys can get together and start being productive again. But for these 2 days, be selfish. That's my claim. Questions, comments, snide remarks? Yay! EA Global! All right. So if you're bored of this, get up and leave. And if you're not bored, ask a question. Yeah.
Is there any way to stimulate this with somebody who may not be very familiar or open to this type? Because that's probably the majority of.
A little bit. So the idea here was how to do the sort of double crux thing unilaterally, right? By the way, they're teaching double crux upstairs all day. You should go learn double crux from Eli and Lauren. It's great. But the idea here was how could you do double crux unilaterally if the other person's like not interested in cooperating? And this is what we came up with. Another way to distinguish this is like, instead of scoring points, try to win. Like there's this thing, I used to teach 6th graders, and my 6th graders would come in and they'd be like, you know, I was trying to convince mom to let me stay out late past curfew, and I won the argument, but I still can't stay out past curfew. It's so unfair. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, I made all these devastatingly correct points, and like, obviously, there's like no way that she can keep me in, you know, no way that they can't give me permission. And I was like, but did they give you permission? Like, no. And there's this sort of like, something's broken there. And so I guess the thing that I'm pointing at here is dodge the scoring points mentality and go straight for the thing that you actually want, which I hope is to like learn more and see more and gather as much information as you can about all the knobs and levers and switches in the universe so that you know how to flip them so that you can make all of your good goals come true. No evil goals. Use your powers for good. Yeah? Was that a question?
Oh, that's me.
What is double crux? You're saying that they were teaching it?
Yeah, it's a method of conversation, a sort of like productive debate algorithm that helps you get to the bottom of things and resolve disagreement very quickly. In short, it's finding the if-then statement you can agree on. So like, you and I disagree about whether or not middle school students should wear uniforms, but we both agree that like, if these things hold true, the answer is yes. And if those things hold true, the answer is no. And we like still disagree about which side is true, but we know that like we will end up on the same side once data comes in. Yeah.
Is that the same as falsifiability?
It's related. It's an operationalization of that. Yeah. Cool. All right. One more question, if anybody. Yeah.
So with this kind of diagram here you've drawn, some people might, say that they don't want to engage in this double crux thinking because perhaps the other person doesn't have part of the map, basically, to have something useful, something outside the map. Are you suggesting that we go in with an open mind and collect all this kind of like information that they know, and then go through and like, look to see if it's justified later? Like,
Yeah, there's two stages. One stage is getting everything onto your desk, and then the second stage is like letting some of it into your brain. And I posit that a lot of people never even bother to let the other person's thoughts get onto their desk, metaphorically speaking, right? So I'm arguing that you guys should pull in everything you can find and put it all on your desk. And then later on, you can decide which parts of it are allowed to actually get into your brain. But that's it. I got to go. If anybody wants to follow me, I'm running to do a workshop down the hall, and I'll turn it over to Helen.
Yeah, I want to apologize to Duncan for not being here to introduce him as the curriculum director of the Center for Applied Rationality. Let's thank him.